Data Shark, super excited for today. We're going to have Dave Mariani with us. He is the CTO and founder of AtScale, which is a very interesting company that is really innovating in a space that hasn't innovated for years and years. It's been a somewhat stagnant space, in my opinion. But AtScale is super interesting because they work in the world of OLAP, which, like I said, has been a fairly quiet space, in my opinion, but actually has a lot of use and need in the market. And so, Dave, we have this super broad audience that we're always talking to. And I always like to ask the founder or the person that created the technology, what does the world look like without your solution? Why is it necessary? And what does it do for people that when they don't have it, where's the struggle come from?
Yeah, thanks, Jared. That's a great question. I've been living this problem for a while, and that we sort of moved away from semantic layers. Semantic layers, and the thing that I love about OLAP is people always associate OLAP with technology, the technology underneath it, which was really a specialized database that turned out not really scaling very well. And so we kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater, meaning it was really, to me, the semantic layer of the business-friendly measures and dimensions and hierarchies. It was presenting data in a way that anyone can understand it. And understand it without having to write SQL or to write code. And so to be able to do pivots and be able to take crosstabs and say, show me sales by region, by time, that's a very natural thing to do. And OLAP was really good at that. And so we got away from that. Because the technology stopped scaling from a database perspective. And so what happened is we moved to these new data warehouses, and we took a giant step back where we took away that semantic layer, that business-friendly semantic layer, and said, you know what, since that OLAP technology doesn't work and can't scale, you're going to have to go back to writing SQL queries. And in my opinion, what it did in the world we're living in without OLAP, scalable OLAP, without AtScale, is that we've taken the amount of people in an organization that can use data to make decisions, and we whittled it down to a few experts. And to me, that's just wrong. Everybody in an organization should be using data to make decisions. And one of our customers, Wayfair, so I'll give them credit for that. They got rid of the title of analyst, data analyst. And because they said everybody needs to be a data analyst. And they used AtScale and that's business-friendly semantic layer to say, you know what, we're expecting everyone to make decisions, because it's easier for us to teach the business how to use a semantic layer and do analytics than it is to teach an engineer about the business. and really, without the world without AtScale means that you're trying to teach data engineers the business. And I think that's just wrong and a waste of time.
And tell us a little bit about, the OLAP category, as where it was. It feels to me like, as time moved on, OLAP sort of became put in this corner of it's for finance, right? It's for budgeting and planning only. And, and just for the audience, in terms of, understanding that the OLAP in traditional senses, it would actually persist this structure, like it would be an actual structure. And, and that's what made it so great for budgeting and planning, is that the structure could house, future budget numbers and things like that. And I remember back in the old days, Arkady would remember this too, is we had a client down in New Jersey that had what was the name of the technology, Arkady? Do you remember the one in?
It was Holos.
Holistic Systems.
Holistic Systems, which later became Seagate Software.
Yeah. So
They had an
we
HP Superdome
yes,
with 100 million cubes running on it.
Wow.
stackable cubes. So it was a
impressive.
terabyte of RAM. This is back in like year 2000.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
I think.
For
Oh yeah, it
that
was
much
like
RAM.
I
don't know
couldn't
how you
even
did it.
believe that much RAM existed. Remember, year
No.
2000, 1 terabyte of RAM was like unheard of.
Yes.
So we
1
thought it was
terabyte
just
of disk was
unbelievable.
hard to come by, right?
Yeah. So it was an unreal system, and they couldn't piece it apart in their world. It was just so so they had to document it.
But the reason, and I think it's 100,000 cubes that they had. The reason why it was so
It was a million. It was a million cubes.
was a million cubes,
Million stackable cubes.
highly adopted. It just made it made me concerned that 100, a million cubes just seems in a terabyte of space just seems a bit much. But to Dave's earlier point, the reason that it was so popular and so well adopted was because business users were able to go in and interact directly with it. That was the biggest boon for the business community, because it was self-service at a time where self-service was just a conversation.
Yeah, totally true, Arkady. And look, to answer your question, Jared, about that, is that why finance? Why? Because finance is, first of all, the finance users they're not SQL experts, they're not data engineers, right? They're finance people. So that's one reason. But the other reason is that the reason why that still exists today is that if you think about financial transactions, they're pretty small relative. Like when you're talking about customer interactions and a click stream, it's a whole nother sort of step up in terms of scalability. So so if you're looking at the traditional OLAP where the whole cube has to be materialized and stored on disk as basically a big array.
Right.
Once you start adding lots of dimensions and then having those dimensions be very deep in terms of having a lot of transactions associated with them, the technology doesn't scale. And that's what we really, so at Yahoo, I ran analytics for Yahoo. And this was back in 2010 era. And we had the most data of anybody at the time. And I was out there, I had 200 engineers. They were basically doling out data and creating extracts for my MicroStrategy users and for my Tableau users and for my applications, my Click users. And all I did all day long was basically take the same data and break it up and make it small for all these different tools. So that was wrong. And so what I did is I used SQL Server Analysis Services, which is an OLAP technology that does materialize and store data on disk. And my team created a 24 terabyte cube. And we had the same kind of craziness. Like we had to buy an IBM server that was like, the biggest IBM server we could ever buy, because to be able to fit it. And guess what? That was only for 3 months worth of data. And it was still huge because it was 3.5 billion transactions a day. It was all of our ad data. And that one cube, that was just one cube. It generated $50 million of lift in that ad business every year because all of our ad people could use that to optimize campaigns and squeeze all that extra revenue out. And why? Because of that OLAP layer, because of that semantic layer, because everybody could use it, but the technology just didn't scale for me. And so that was the aha moment for me was, gosh, I see that semantic layer and that OLAP interface is so popular, but the technology is so broken. So let's keep the semantic layer and let's reinvent the back end so we can make this model scale. And that's where I think that up to now the approaches have been to take that same materialization model and just try to make it work on the cloud. And the problems are all the same. Maybe you've increased your ability to scale out a little bit more, but you're still going to run into the same problems where you have to pick and choose what data is worthy to be in your cube. And to me, that's a game over right there. You can't force companies to do that.
Yeah, and that was a big issue because like the cube had to compute all of those values and have them like persisted.
Right.
And if something
Pre-calculate.
wasn't in there, it was like, dang, now we got to recompute this whole thing. Yeah, it was very, a lot of times in the old days when I would talk about, we used to do a lot of business objects work.
Yeah.
And I would tell them, look, you might corner yourself by doing this stuff in OLAP because you've got to compute this. It's almost like, I would tell them, it's almost like running a report and having all of the values in memory in that report, but running it for everything and having every value computed,
all the intersections.
Yeah.
So Jared, I got to tell you a story at Yahoo because it's a real story. So it took us, for that 3-month cube, it took us 7 days of 24/7 processing to build the cube.
Wow.
7 days.
7 days.
7 days. It took a week. And so we were really smart in that we did incremental updates during the day. So we could do 2 updates during the day. So it didn't mean that the data was 7 days old, because that would never work in display advertising. No way. So what we do is we had to do this wacky stuff where once we did an incremental update on one cube, we had an A and a B cube. Yeah. And so we would update we would take the A would be serving, we'd update the B, and then once the B was done, we'd do a swap so that now A became B.
So, very familiar. A/B switch like we did with printers.
So that required snapshots on a NetApp, right? And so one of my engineers, God bless his soul, there was a problem with one of the snapshots, and he deleted the other snapshot.
Oh.
So the whole business for 1 week had no data because we had to rebuild the cube from scratch. So this is and so that was like, imagine me having to explain to the whole ad team that they were blind for a week. I mean, man. So you talk about the moment, the aha moment. That was not the aha moment. That was the bat across the head moment.
Yeah. That's right. That's good. Oh. So tell us about, I think this is probably good transitioning, because tell us about how it got started. I mean, obviously you had some of these, real painful moments in your background that were sort of cueing you to this, but like, how did things get started? Like, was it, from these moments and then you just decided to kind of start developing, or, did you start in a garage? Like where did things get started?
So, so first of all, my team at Yahoo, we tried to solve the problem at Yahoo, meaning trying to use open source software to be able to build our own sort of modern cube. And it had the same problem. So their approach was to basically build that matrix in memory, and we had the same problem within memory. It's like you can't even get enough memory to be able to get all the data you need. So it doesn't work. So I moved on from Yahoo to Cloud and sort of suffered the same problem over there with Hadoop and being able to sort of do that last mile of analytics and needing a semantic layer and that OLAP sort of technology to do it. And I was complaining to one of my friends who was a venture capitalist at Kleyner Perkins at the time. And I was complaining about the state and like, somebody needs to solve this problem. And he said, well, why don't you solve this problem? It's like, well, what do you mean? It's like, I don't know how to do this. I can't start this up. I'm not a CEO. And he's like, well, why not? Like, why aren't you a CEO? Why can't you do this? And it was really that moment that I said, well, why not? Right? Why not try it? If I can get funding to start this thing, and I can pull in some of the people that we tried to build this at Yahoo, and some of the people that know the problem and are passionate about it as me. Yeah. Why can't I try it? And I'll give myself a year and a half. And if it doesn't work out, I'll just go back and get a job. Yeah. And continue to do this. But why not take a swing at it? And that's what I did. I went and got the old team together. Nice. Raised $2 million of venture money in awesome. Seed money. And
Was your friend at
open.
Kleyner Perkins helping you, or what, did
Oh,
I mean,
there's a
he was the one that.
story that you definitely helped me. Now, at the end of the day, there's definitely a story there where Kleiner Perkins didn't do the seed funding because
Yeah.
there was another technology that they thought was competitive,
Okay.
which
Yep.
it wasn't. But we ended up going a different way.
Sure.
And Storm Ventures, I'll plug them.
Nice.
An amazing set of people,
Mhm.
great people. That basically took this idea, which was crazy at the time. Everybody said it couldn't happen, and they believed it, and they invested in us, and they've
Awesome.
been with us ever since. Yeah.
Awesome. So when you got it, started, was it just like one or two people, or was it the whole team? Did you kind of go all guns a blazing?
So it was like a shake and bake company. So
Okay.
everybody was doing their jobs right in terms of the team, but I had selected sort of the people that I thought would be my co-founders, and I went out and beat the streets, and got the money. So as soon as we closed the round, we
Mhm.
formed the company, and my other four co-founders quit their jobs and joined AtScale. We got into an office, near the 300 square feet next to the train
Nice.
tracks, that had rats that came at night. Not that bad, but went to Fry's and bought our computers, and did it the
Nice.
hard way.
Yeah.
But those were amazing times because we had no email in our inboxes because we were
Yeah,
all new.
that's intimidating. When you start your email and there's nothing there.
We have no customers, which, by the way, sometimes having no customers is good because
Yeah,
there's no
flexibility.
it's a blank slate. It's a clean sheet of paper, and we really got to sit down and say, okay, let's solve all the problems that we've suffered over the years, and
Now, was there
do it the way we
something
want to do
already
it.
there? Was there something kind of like, was there a concept already sort of formulated on how you were going to solve this problem? Because it seems like a big risk to take if you didn't sort of have some kind of architecture plan, sort of on a napkin at least.
For sure. And remember, we tried to solve the problem
Mhm.
using open source software at Yahoo.
Right.
And so from that, my co-founder, Sarah Gerwick, was the lead on that project. And
Mm.
so in that experience, Sarah's like, okay, I know where this went wrong, and I know
Yeah.
what we need to do to fix it. And so, it was really through that experience of actually trying and failing,
Yep. Yep.
that led to our solution. And of course, you know, it was, we're a very pragmatic team. And
Hmm.
so we didn't try to, a lot of people try to like boil the ocean and try
Yeah.
to come
Yeah.
up with the most sort of like, complicated architectures. And we really believe in KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
Yep.
And we figured out a way of doing it that and testing it and making sure it would work
Hmm.
before we actually went and committed ourselves to it.
Yeah, that's cool. So
All
as you
three of us
guys,
can certainly sorry, Jared.
oh
All three
yeah,
of us can certainly relate to that. I think the idea of boiling the ocean and living up to the two words underneath the Intricity logo, simplifying complexity, I think is
yeah,
a difficult thing to do, especially when you start a company, because we should add this and we should add this and we should
oh
add
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
keeping it core, getting it to an MVP, and validating that you've got something amazing.
So from
That's really
zero,
what it was. That's really was. It was the
yeah,
MVP. Was like we had customers that were interested, so we got feedback right away, and so and that was the key. Once we knew that we had something working, we knew that we had at least two committed customers that were willing to at least try it and try it for real, not try it as a
yeah, yeah.
favor to Dave.
Well,
Yeah.
and that was actually my question is, when you got started, did you already kind of have an idea who those customers were, or did you just have to go hit the street to go find them?
I had to hit the street to go find them. That was really scary because look, I'm not a sales guy,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I hate fundraising. Like for I work for a nonprofit and on the board, and whenever they ask me to go ask people for money, it's like just not me. I hate doing that. I really
Yeah,
do.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
But it's like it is what you got to do. And so for me, it was telling the story. And one of the ways that I knew that we had something special was when I told the story and showed what we were talking about and what we were doing.
Yeah.
The answer was like, that's too good to be true. It's like, what do you mean? I can have my semantic layer, my measures and my dimensions, but I don't have to pre-build the cube. I don't have to build
Yeah.
cubes. I don't understand that. It's like, I can have all that ease of use, but we don't have to pre-calculate. That's too good to be true. And to me,
Yeah.
it was like, that's music to my ears, because look, it's like, that's what a proof of concept is called. And we'll
Right.
show you, you don't have to believe me, because we're going to show you working. And I knew
Right.
that was something that we could do, and then that was our goal.
When you started, how between when you kind of all got in the building together with 0 emails to the point where you had something to demo, how long was that? Was that was that a fairly stressful moment because it was taking so long?
So let's see. We started in towards the end of September. And by the close of December of the following year, so that's what's that? That's like
a year and 3 months or so.
A
maybe
year
4
and
months.
3 months.
Yeah.
We signed our first contract. And like
Wow.
literally before, like it was December 31st. I don't know why I wanted to close it before I don't know. There was some probably the board meeting was the next week. But literally it was like December 31st that we signed our first contract, and it was for 200 grand. It was a pretty good. It was pretty good.
Nice. Yeah.
So it wasn't a pittance. And that was it. That's how long it took us to actually.
Now, did they know they were customer number one?
Yeah, they did. And part of that, right, is like there's a different set of customers, at different phases.
Yes.
You guys know this, different phases of the company. And for those first early customers, they knew that that if this was a good idea, they were going to build their careers on this experience.
Right.
And so I felt a tremendous amount of pressure not to let these people down, because they're putting their careers on the line to pick some software from somebody who doesn't have any other customers. It's craziness.
Yeah.
And because of their belief that this is going to change the business. And to me and all the co-founders, that was like the more of the driving force was, we don't want to let these people down because they believe in us. And not about making money or even being successful or closing that next round of funding, which we needed customers to do. It was, we're not going to let these people down. And that's a different type of customer. They're out there, but you got to find them.
Yeah, Jared always looks for these signs, and I think what you just described, I think to us is a critically important sign. It's the fact that we're not there to sign a contract, take money, put it in the bank. We passionately care about their success because we are making people's careers or jeopardizing their careers, and certainly we want the former.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us about some inflection points as you were coming from, from 0 to where you're at now. What have been some big inflection points for the organization? Has it been related to more database support, or, what have been some of the big changes that have happened over time?
Yeah, there's two. There's one that's organizational and one that's technical. But I'll start with the technical one because I'm a technical guy. I love it. So, we first focused when we went to market. We focused on Hadoop, and that came out of my experience and our experience at Yahoo. We invented Hadoop at Yahoo, and that's this whole concept of a data lake, where you could just pour your data into it, and then you can add structure when you needed it. That whole schema on read. It's a brilliant idea. And for me, that was like a game changer. And moving away from the tightly schema on write, which is what data warehouses wanted, was something that was a game changer for me. So we focused on AtScale on being an OLAP layer on the data lake, on Hadoop. And during the first, year and a half, 2 years, what we saw is that, Hadoop definitely needed us. So boy, was that a good fit. But at the same time, our early customers were struggling with keeping Hadoop running. Companies like Home Depot and Rakuten, who are early customers, it's just like, it was like, trying to keep the cluster running and then expanding it was just such it was such a technical challenge for
Yeah.
companies who are selling products. They're not in the business to be a
Right. Right.
database company.
Yeah.
And so we
Full-time
saw
job.
them struggling. And so, but because of that,
So give
it's
me
like what we saw.
what years was this?
That would have been, let's see, that would have been so 2016, 2017.
Okay. Okay.
Would have been when we're talking about era there.
Yeah.
And so what we saw is, so I saw that, boy, if customers can't be successful deploying Hadoop, then AtScale can't be successful being deployed on Hadoop.
Right.
And all of our support cases were about Hadoop. It wasn't about AtScale. Well, there was plenty of AtScale software issues, but
Sure.
most of it was like, Spark was crashing or Hive was crashing, and those were the engines that we depended on, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
had to have the cluster had to work for AtScale to work. And if you're the front end for all those analytics and and it doesn't work, nobody cares about Hadoop not working. It's AtScale's not working.
Right.
And so what we saw, and what I saw, was that I saw Google BigQuery come on the scene, and Snowflake.
Mhm.
And then Redshift already had a head start. And it was clear that these cloud data warehouses were important. And when our customers, when our customers at Home Depot said, Dave, can you make this work on Google BigQuery? And I'm like, absolutely, we can make it work on Google BigQuery, because the architecture is such that we use JDBC to talk to the back end. So we
Sure.
didn't embed ourselves into Hadoop so that
Yeah.
we couldn't take ourselves out. And the companies that did do that, by the way, they're gone. So
Yeah.
all
They
our
got
early
hosed.
competitors got hosed. But
Yeah.
what we did is we said, okay, this is it. We're going to port to Google BigQuery and Snowflake. And we're going to use our customers. Home Depot, we took to BigQuery,
Mhm.
and Rakuten, we took to Snowflake. And that's
Mhm.
from on-prem Hadoop. And we partnered with our customers to really make that big leap.
Mhm.
And we would be out of business if we didn't, because I'm
Right.
telling
Right.
you, all of our new business is all cloud data warehouses.
Yeah.
And that's obviously where everybody is going. And so that was a huge inflection point for the company. If we didn't make that turn, we would not be talking today.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
that was on the technical side. Now, on the organizational side, I was a reluctant CEO. I mean, this goes back to the conversation with the venture capitalist. Come on, Dave, you could do it. You can be a CEO. I don't want to be a CEO. I'm a CTO. I'm a VP of engineering. I build stuff. It's like, well, build companies. It's like, okay. And I told myself that, look, I'll take this thing to 10 million in revenue, and then after that, I'm tapping out, because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to build a sales organization and a marketing organization and scale it. And so we got to that point about 2.5, 3 years ago, and I looked for somebody who could do that, and that's where I came across Chris Lynch, who's now our CEO.
Mhm.
And Chris Lynch had proven chops in data. He loves data. He was the CEO of Vertica, and so I knew he knew the space and knew the domain and knew how to scale big organizations.
Yep.
Tremendous success. And so I handed the reins over to Chris Lynch to run the company.
That's great.
And that was an emotional
Oh, I
organizational
bet.
sea change for sure. But it was definitely the right decision to make.
This reminds me of a story, and this is from several years ago, many years back. We were part of a startup doing some work with a gentleman who had created a product, and we were in our first client meeting, and we asked him, so how much do you think this will price out at, for if this particular customer? And he says, I think it's probably, $60,000. And the guy who was on our sales team, he said, listen, I don't want you to say anything about price. Do you understand? And he's like, fine, that's fine. And his expertise was product, the product itself and whatnot. But he didn't really know how to value it inside of organizations. And so we're sitting in the meeting, and this guy on the sales side. He said, I think this is right around $800,000 worth of, worth of software. And the client was fine. It's like, okay, and the guy was like, what is going on? Like, how could it be that we went from 60,000 to 800,000? And the truth is that a lot of engineers do not know the value of their what their solution is. Not to say that you didn't, but there's parts of a business that really do benefit from expertise and knowing how to grow that business and whatnot. And our specializations really matter. So,
well, and it's interesting though, because with what we're talking about, with what Dave was saying earlier, that it's easier to teach the business people how to get at the data using a semantic layer than try and teach your engineers the business. It's stay in your swim lanes. Let's work with this expertise that we have. I mean, for years and years, how many data warehousing BI projects failed either because we had the technology people trying to do business stuff, or we had business people trying to do the technology side of things. And that was one of the big reasons that a lot of those projects failed for years and years.
Yeah. And look, I just believe, I just love technology. So every time I had to spend time on sales and marketing and customer success and doing board decks and talking, it was all just like, that was work for me, I was always saying, gosh, I just want to do tech. I mean, I really do. And a lot of times, and I always tell this, with people who are thinking about starting companies and founders, it's like, just do what you love and realize that you can't do everything, and you're not going to do everything well. And sometimes you need a partner that can be complementary and take on the things that maybe you don't want to do or you don't like to do, and that they love to do. And I really do believe that that's the right way to build a company, is to have a team together, because you need to have specialists, and the specialists need to work as a team. And if you can do that, you can be a successful company and serve your customers the best way that you can. So
so one of the questions I have is the feature sets that you've been excited about, either in the past or coming in the future. Like, what are some of the big inflection points in terms of features that you've gone through? We talked about the going from Hadoop to Snowflake and BigQuery and whatnot. Are there any other things, like feature set types that you've been excited about, or are you could certainly make some product announcements here. I will not stop you. So.
So we've always focused on the business intelligence workload. So focusing early on for a company is very important, right? We focused on Hadoop, and we decided, okay, we need to change that focus. So we changed to cloud data warehouses, still supporting Hadoop, but we still had that focus. So business intelligence was our big persona. And what we found is that as we got more and more customers, we started to see AI and ML. A data scientist has a lot of the same problems that business analyst does, which is, how can I go and get the data? And I saw this at Yahoo. At Yahoo, I was in the data engineering side, but we had Yahoo Labs, which is where our data scientists, which was as big as our engineering team at Yahoo. And I remember them coming to me with the same, well, we don't have access to data. We can't get access to data. It's like, well, we built this Hadoop thing over there, and go and read the docs, and there you go. You got all the data you need to feed your models. But they didn't know how to get at it. Right. And so it's the same thing today, is that the data science function is still a function of experts. Just like the business intelligence side, we took a step back and said that now data engineers need to be do business intelligence. And so that semantic layer for data science, to me, is another area that's been underexploited, unexploited. And so we just recently announced AI Link, and that is our Python library that allows our AtScale semantic layer to be used in Jupyter notebooks, in Data Robot, and H2O. So now data scientists can leverage that semantic layer the same way our business intelligence folks do. And better yet, they can write back their predictions back
Nice.
to the semantic model. So we close that loop, because the other problem we saw is that the data scientists, they do all this amazing work, and what do? They have a file as their output. Okay, so then, okay, great. You predicted next month's sales. Wow, thank you, Mr. Data Scientist. How do I compare that to what my budget for those for next month was?
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh well, good luck, because now you have a data integration problem. And so what we've done is that we've joined together AI and BI together, using the semantic layer as that unifying concept.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that is a good way of taking the work of data science and democratizing it within an organization, and giving more power to the semantic layer, which gives more power to everyone. So that's what I'm excited about.
I love that. It's been a challenge bridging what I would call prototyping to manufacturing, and prototyping is data science, and the manufacturing is, it's the conformity, it's delivering data to the users. I really like that idea of just having a closed loop there. And it is interesting to me too. We've done work with a big helicopter company, and I found it interesting that, the data science teams do often get ignored because we believe that they only want raw data. And the truth is, they want it for certain cases, for sure, but they don't want to waste their time doing conformity work, doing data munging all day. There's certain cases where they need raw data, but there's a lot of cases where they don't want to be at that layer at all. And if someone's already done the work for them, they'll take it, and they'd be happy to have it.
And I've made the argument that about 80% of what goes into Jupyter Notebooks or any of the data science, 80% of it is all about data munging. Only 20% of the code, if not less, is actual data science work, where you might be doing a prediction, where you might be doing some regression analysis, where you might be running something on a scikit-learn, one of the scikit-learn models, and that's a big challenge. Jared is absolutely right. The other that Dave touched on is that normally our reference architectures all look the same. They go left to right. And we've always talked about the point that you touched on, which is the write back capability. The fact that an OLAP has always been able to do that. It's the ability to take not just a static report, but now you've done the analysis, you've created the forecast, you've created the whatever nugget you've been able to identify, and now having the ability to write it back is critically important. A lot of times that's a missing step.
Well, I got to ask you, Dave, does it actually write it back to, say, Snowflake or BigQuery, or is it housing it in kind of an in-memory structure? What's it doing?
Yeah, Jared. Arkady, you make a great point. Look, it's writing it back to the data platform that we're talking to. So
interesting.
We have no data store, and that was a conscious decision in the architecture when we formed the company. It's like, we don't believe we can become a good database company. We're gonna let the Snowflakes and the Googles, we're gonna let them innovate there, and we're gonna ride on their shoulders. And we're gonna ride on their shoulders by making those data platforms work for analytics. And we have never strayed from that. So we have no data store. There's no proprietary AtScale data store. It's always gets stored back to the data platform. But it's not just the data gets written back, right? Because that's the raw data, but it's also the semantics on top of that turn it into measures and dimensions and hierarchies, which make it usable. And all those relationships, those are the things that we can do automatically because we understand, because we've already done the model on the base data to begin with. So now we can augment the model with the new features or the new predictions as new metrics or new attributes in the model, without the data scientists having to worry about how to model that data.
Right. Tell us a little bit about the canvas. I mean, what are people using to actually consume the data from a visualization perspective? Is it just third-party tools? Do you guys use your own canvas? Like, what's the consumption mechanism?
Well, you know what? Again, we made a part of the real part of our decision was not to invent our own, not invest in our own visualization interface for the
Yeah.
same reason why we didn't want to reinvent the data platform. Was that we thought that Tableau was doing a good job. We thought that Excel, which is the most popular BI tool in the world, was unmovable, and that we needed to make AtScale work with it. So the canvas was we got to make data available to everyone. It's not just about making it business friendly through a semantic layer. It's also going and being present in the tools that they understand and know how to use. So that means if you want to use Tableau, you can use Tableau with SQL with AtScale. If you want to use Power BI, we're the only guys on the planet that have a DAX interface for Power BI that gives a live connection other than Microsoft. We're the only ones on the planet, right?
Nice.
If you want to use Excel, you use Excel through the built-in analysis services driver through MDX, no client side to install. If you want to use it through Looker, it doesn't matter. If you want to use custom applications, you can do it through JDBC or DBC or REST. So the whole point was to have basically present a number of different protocol heads into our platform so that our customers can plug and play and use the tools, including Jupyter Notebooks, to be able to expose and consume that semantic layer, rather than us trying to force them into our view of a visualization interface.
Nice.
And so that's presented challenges to us, right? Because we're kind of hidden, right? So somebody who's using Power BI, wow,
they don't know it.
Power BI. I love the fact this is so fast, and look at these measures and dimensions. This is great. That's all of us doing that behind there, but we're not necessarily visible, right?
Yeah, good point.
So so
you need to have in your data set, have like a something that
powered
pushes
by
out
AtScale,
powered by
or scaled by AtScale. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll send back some extra little bits that says AtScale in every report. There'll be an AtScale member in every report. I don't know.
It's an interesting problem. It's actually a problem that is in a lot of data management products struggle with this. Like, I'll give you a really good one, like master data management. That industry struggles to get attention. But the reason why is because nobody really cares about this stuff unless a train wreck occurs, and so getting visibility, as to why this solution is necessary is a real challenge. When you are sort of invisible in the middle, but having it's almost like you have to find that niche group that really cares about this stuff, and for them it's just ambrosia. They're just like, oh my gosh, where have you been? So,
but also I think to Dave's point, it's Excel. So all they see is Excel, or it's Power BI. All they see is Power BI. And frankly, for the organization, the fact that there's this level of transparency that irrespective of the tooling you've got, whether you're doing it through a data science notebook like Jupyter or Data IQ or any of the other tools that we would normally use, it's transparent to you. It's the ubiquitous JDBC connection, if you will, or RESTful endpoint. And so that's really the point of why this is so valuable to an organization. We all know sort of virtualization efforts, physicalization efforts, and sort of where AtScale has changed things. If you think about the early BI, the large BI tools, Business Objects, MicroStrategy, Cognos, metadata was, and Looker today, metadata was a big part of those BI tools, and that's what made it so powerful. When we've moved it away from that, now we're writing direct queries. We've lost that layer in the middle that sort of describes the business, and that's the
number one. Right on, Arkady. You said it so well. And and what our customers love about the fact that they can support multiple access types, but the data is always consistent and it's always governed, right? Because if we're in the middle of every query, we can make sure that that the finance people can see revenue, but the the merchandising people can't see that field. And you can but if they're looking at historical revenue, both sides are going to see the same exact numbers every time, regardless of whether they're consuming it with Excel or Power BI or a custom application. And that consistency and that governance is the reason why, people will go that extra mile and they'll say, let's do this. Because it is like, ultimately it is work, and that you have to model your data to get the value out of our platform.
Mhm.
But I think the juice is worth the squeeze, because of it creates that ability for more people in the organization to make more decisions, and we see that in our customers. We're talking about thousands of users using Excel, and they're not using Excel just with pivot tables. They're building these merchandising models where a cell is pointed to a cell in the AtScale virtual cube, and all they need to do is refresh those models, and everything Excel takes care of, pulling all that data, but
Yeah.
AtScale delivers all that fresh data. So the old way of having to basically sneaker net it in and import data in, and then we spend all this time on updating the models where, okay, this is my input data and I'm going to have all
Mhm.
these,
Mhm.
all that stuff is gone. It's very natural, and it's consistent, and it's fast. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's why they buy us.
So what is
And
oh, go ahead.
sorry, Jared, just one point that Dave touched on, and we've sort of covered a little bit. I just want to drill into it because it's really, I think, critically important. When you've got data that is centralized, irrespective of which community is accessing, and not just the community, but which tools are accessing, they're getting consistent, governed, secure environment. And so if I'm connecting to AtScale from Jupyter, from Power BI, from Tableau, from Looker, it doesn't really matter. I've secured it, I've governed it at a layer that is consistent. I don't have to maintain it in each
Yeah.
of the various BI or data science tools. That's a big important thing when you want to run a successful security or data governance program.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and look, it's like self-service. Like, we all talk about self-service, and there's a dark side to self-service, right? And I saw it at my customer. I saw it.
That's a good
I
way of
saw
putting
it
it.
I mean, I saw it at Yahoo, right? So it's like, I had to have a team of 10 people we called it a data quality team at Yahoo. Their job was to reconcile the MicroStrategy reports to the Tableau reports.
Yeah.
And so once you have data drift, I mean, it's gonna happen. And our metrics were page views and clicks,
Mm-hmm.
and conversions. Those were it. Those were the three. And we could not have consistent metrics in different tools over those three basic metrics.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not hard to sort of get that divergence if you don't have a way to consistently govern and manage, and making sure that that what you call revenue or what you call a click is the same regardless of what tool you do it in.
Sure. Sure.
Right.
So what's the effort involved? So if a company wants to do this, what do they got to do? I mean, what's the process for deploying it? How much work's involved there?
So AtScale itself is a very thin layer, that can be deployed in the cloud or on-prem. Because we are pushing all of our work to the data platform,
Mhm.
it's very thin when it comes to, you're not buying the biggest IBM server you can buy for
Mhm.
AtScale, okay?
Mhm.
Because you're dealing with the pizza
Right.
box.
Right.
So deployment is, you can install AtScale in under 20 minutes. So that's easy. Creating the models, again, the models are key for us to work, right? We need to have a
Mhm.
data model to be able to just expose that semantic layer. That's the basis of our semantic layer. So for that, there's different ways. You can manually build your semantic layer, or if you have Tableau workbooks, we
Mhm.
can ingest the Tableau workbooks and create semantic layers from Tableau. So
Mhm.
pull the models that have been embedded in those Tableau workbooks and create at-scale models. We can also take them from SSAS, SQL Server Analysis
Yep.
Services. We can take that cube and create an at-scale model from that, or you can create one manually. So for doing that and creating those models, that's going to take as long as it takes in terms of how ambitious you want to be. If you're
Mhm.
doing a cloud migration, you have a lot of sort of things to port and test. If you're starting from scratch, you can get an at-scale virtual model up in 15 minutes,
Right.
and be consuming it. So it varies from that perspective of, is it net new or is it a migration? And it typically is a migration,
Mhm.
because what we see is that most of the time customers are coming from on-prem, and
Yep.
maybe on-prem SSAS, SQL Server
Mhm.
Analysis Services, or on-prem, Oracle or Teradata, and they want to move to Snowflake or Google BigQuery or Redshift or
Mhm.
Synapse or Databricks, and so we're going to help them do that through that model. So
Mhm.
on the front end side, if it's done right, things don't have to change on the front end side, because instead of talking directly to the data source, you're now talking to the AtScale layer, and that should be seamless. So so when you think about all the downstream, all the stuff you got on the legacy pointing to these other data sources, we can really help on migrating those workbooks and the like, especially if it's SSAS. We look just like SSAS. So as long as the model is the same, there's going to be no change to the end users. They're not going to know the difference. For Home Depot, for example, we took them from on-prem Hortonworks to Google BigQuery in the cloud. They started the migration on Saturday, and on Monday, the users, and we're talking about thousands of users, were now querying from Google BigQuery, not Hortonworks.
Nice.
So it was just about changing that data source to point
Right.
from on-prem Hadoop to point to Google BigQuery, and that was because of that semantic layer. It was because of that abstraction that allowed them to have that sort of flexibility to actually rip the data platform out from underneath us, and replace it with something else.
Did the IT guy must have gotten a trophy or something,
Yeah, you know what? It's like, no, the IT guys never get trophies. It was supposed to work that way.
He got to work all weekend. That's what he got.
Yeah, that's what he did. That's what it was.
They'll get fired if it didn't work, but they don't get any pats on the back if it did work.
To those listening to this broadcast, that's something that needs to change. We've got to recognize our IT
I agree.
people.
Yeah, I agree.
One other interesting point about this is that you don't need to have a dimensional model to be able to use AtScale. But if you do have a dimensionalized model, whether it be already in analysis services, or if you have a dimensional model in your warehouse, Snowflake, BigQuery, and so on, it makes it easier because you're that much further along, and you're prepared to project it into the cube.
Yeah.
Super good point, Arkady. Super good point.
So what's the best way to find AtScale, engage with your team, all of that? Tell us how to find you.
www.atscale.com. So that another little story about AtScale. I had to buy that domain for I think it was $2,000. So
wow.
Otherwise you would be atscale.org or something.
Yeah.
That. So www.atscale.com. And there's a big old button of get a demo. There's great. We do great webinar series with customers that are not AtScale commercials. So if you want to learn more about the space and what other customers are doing, there's lots of great content when it comes to our webinars that you can view offline. And you can always press on that demo button, and I assure you somebody will call you and have a conversation with you and learn about your project.
Now, is there anything that I didn't ask that I should have asked?
You guys are awesome in terms of your stuff. So you asked it all.
Good.
I guess we covered a lot of ground here. So thank you guys for being
Dave,
practitioners and having a conversation with me.
Yes, thank you for joining us. This is it's a lot of fun for us to have founders on, because they show a passion for the products that they have. Sometimes people people that aren't in the founding position, they really don't know how much they should be passionate about it. It's really the founders that bring it, and we really appreciate you coming on and sharing those experiences, and we look forward to working with you guys in the future.
Appreciate the invite. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, thanks everybody
very much.
Thanks for joining.
Jared.
Have an excellent day. Thanks.
Take care.